Good evening, everyone. First of all, let me apologize if the light is a little bit strange here. It's evening now, and um, I'm still kind of working at how to do the lighting appropriately. As you can see, how do we say this? I'm reconstructing this room and turning it into a formal study. And as you've seen, the construction happening over the last week. So, that said, I wanted to make a few points about email. And this is a really, let me say, interesting topic because obviously every one of us writes, I almost want to say too many emails, but let me just say abundant emails. It's something we do every day. And sometimes, of course, we do it for fun. I don't have my phone. I was going to say, we write text messages all the time. Some of us write them by the thousands. I write them by the hundreds of thousands, I kind of sometimes think. Of course, some emails are done like business correspondence, and they're done carefully. And so there's a wide range. Okay, so one would think, that this would lead people to really thoroughly understand email and do it sort of automatically. Well, the opposite is the case. And this is, once again, where I feel, in a way, privileged, because one of the things that I've done professionally is basically organize and evaluate email communication for large entities. Let me put it like that. And I found and I witnessed how much confusion there is about this. And I think one of the things that occurs professionally here, once again, at least in my experience, and my experience is pretty broad, is that in general, there are very few general umbrella guidelines for writing emails. Now, if I had more than, if we were in a workshop or a seminar, I would talk about this for 2 hours because it's very important. And when I say that there are few umbrella or general guidelines in organizations, I mean organizations small and large, okay? Because this is generally true, regardless of the organization. They're very hesitant to put the various kinds of guidelines that might happen. Okay, let me specify. I mean, at every level, in terms of grammar, in terms of punctuation. In general, there's nothing done. I guess maybe some publishers might do this. Oxford University Press probably, gives workshops in grammar and things like that because they think they have to. But even then, so grammar, punctuation, various style. Corporations, companies, organizations might have a style guide, but it's not something, in my experience, that is given a lot of time. Most certainly, there's no extensive, there's little, I don't want to say no, there's little extensive research on how to do this. Okay, this said, the tendency is for individual supervisors to either crack the whip or not. And, that's not a very good way of handling things for a whole lot of reasons, because it's attached to another issue, and that is, no supervisor, in my experience, that I've ever talked to, is willing. Let me put it like that. It's funny, really. Is willing to do a workshop on how to do email. Okay, I mean, frankly, I can't even imagine that. For obvious reasons, there's a lot of time. Supervisors are busy. Most of them don't consider themselves quote unquote teachers, and maybe wouldn't be comfortable doing this anyway. Okay, there's a lot to say about this, but I'm not going to. What I want to do instead is this: I have a little list here, a list of 4 things that I'm looking for in email, and that I've basically communicated at least two moments in our class to everyone, sometimes like, whatever, a few times. But let me here enumerate them. And what I want to do is, before our spring break, have a general conversation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my videos to a discussion area. And then, we can go at it. And we can, talk about all this stuff. All these points that I'm making, the 10 points that I'm making in the first 5 or 6 weeks of the class. Okay, here we go. I have to always lean forward to check the time because the font of my timer is very small. Okay, I'm going to be as concise as possible, okay? And because I've said these things before, and when I evaluate your papers, these are the things I'm saying. Okay. Premièrement, first of all, you really, really need in all your email correspondence of any consequence whatsoever to be precise as to place and time. You can't assume that people can figure this out, okay? And you don't want to slow down the communication process by having people scratch their heads and ask where and when. Given the fact that everyone is reading a zillion emails every minute, you have to assume that people are sort of going to be in a fog of sorts, like an electronic fog, and they're only going to be half reading, 2/3 reading, and they're going to be in a hurry, and they're going to be reading your emails in a queue. And so you have to be very precise as to place and time. There's another thing here, there's a legal issue that if there's any controversy over an email or an issue, whatever, then you're going to get requested to supply the place and time if it's not there. And email that does not have place and time indicators on them, saying when you receive something, when you send something, is basically going to be invalid, okay? And is going to cause a lot of problems and a really nasty snag. And you don't want to be put in this situation. I almost want to tell you my stories about this. Has happened to me a couple of times where I was writing what I took to be a kind of casual email. So I didn't sweat it. I just thought, well, the person is working six feet away from me, I'll just make it quick. And what happened is there was some controversy about the discussion, and what that controversy was is of no importance. It wasn't a very important controversy, but it was a situation where I was caught out as not being very precise, and I said, well, it was a casual, familiar email, and my boss was ready to kill me. He was really angry, and said there are no. In my office, there are no casual emails. If you want to do your casual emails, go outside with the, whatever. The guy got kind of mean and nasty about it. So anyway, precise is the place and time. And if you're in doubt about this, just ask your supervisor. If you're in doubt during our class about this, ask me, and I'll tell you. I'll tell you always the same thing, that you need to put place and time in it. And you can fictionalize because, it's sometimes, you're making this up, you're role playing and things like that. Okay, that's one. Two, and this is a deeper thing. And I think you're all doing this. This is something you do. People do pretty well, actually. That always assume that there's more to a story. Okay, and that you're just your letter is a sort of lens looking at a little part of it, and there's more to the story. Okay, and this will help you see things from the other person's point of view and make you less prone to put your foot in your mouth and make problems and not write in a precise way. Okay, so that's two. Always assume there's more to the story and try to figure it out. Later on, we'll talk about this. This is something I want to come back to. Okay, and there's another part that's very important. This is not really in the books. This is a thing the books leave out because for various reasons. That assume that when you're writing an email, assume that there is an easy follow-up. because a couple of you have made really good points about being uncomfortable with professional emails because in a professional correspondence, because you want to put a lot of detail in, but you know you can't. So you're kind of torn between those things. I think the way not to be torn and be what I want you to be, and that is relax. It's just, excuse me, set up your letters so there's a second chapter, so to speak. That is to say, there's a follow-up email. You always assume that, and that's the good thing about professional correspondence today. Once upon a time, I mean, it was like a nightmare. You had to take your letters to the post office and get them registered, and on and on and on. And it's like writing the IRS, as it were. And so those days are gone. This is the day of instant communication. And keep in mind too, there's another important point, that when we're talking about a follow-up, your follow-up can be in 5 minutes. And so that's another thing. Actually, I'm going to add something that I was not going to say, but let me go ahead. Let me check the time. Yes, I have some time. The other thing is, and let me just be blunt about this and not like mince words. One thing I think that is very important. This is something that this is what I'm always patting myself on my back. This is where I think I'm very good at this. For various reasons, and I talk about this in another video. Always assume you're wrong. And that sounds kind of stupid, but always assume you might be wrong, is what I want to say. And assume that you have not been given the full story, from your people. Okay? And this makes one cautious and understanding and always kind of kind. And that's what I always strive. And people say this about me, that, I'm maybe not the nicest person, okay, in real life. But in my business communication, I'm always really, I don't know what to say, careful and kind and well-mannered and respectful. And no one ever sort of sees the harder edges to me, of me in my email correspondence. So I think that's, okay, not only important to remember, but it's also true that in most cases you don't know the whole story. And there's the corollary here is that this might mean that even if you are fully certain, given the evidence, that you're right, you might not be. Okay, so you don't want to have to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm an idiot." In nicer terms, of course. But and so if you're going to have to backtrack, you want the backtracking to be easy. So you assume that it might happen, and I think that's a very, very good policy to follow. Another thing is. And this sounds a little bit old-fashioned, and I think that's okay. In almost every case, offer to contact them and offer to phone. And this comes off really well. I had this conversation about this trait that I do as a email writer a lot. And one of the things that people say to me is, "You always bend over backwards to say." To ask us if we want you to phone us. And why this is good is, there's 2 reasons for it. First of all, it alerts people to the fact that you're not just processing them as though they're robots, that you are aware that there might be an issue. And this relaxes people, and this makes them humanize you and not just treat you like a robot at the end of an email. The other thing is that if there is an issue, you can take care of it. And as someone, who's involved in complicated professional issues, you always, if there is something that might blow up in everyone's face, I mean, speaking really bluntly and candidly here without whatever, making things nicer than they are. You don't want to have a minor issue blow up. You don't want to have a major issue blow up in your face and have to call in the cavalry. You want to do it yourself. And the best way to do this, the easiest way to do this, is just give the people a call and make them alert to the fact that you're more than happy to do this. And this gets easier as you get used to it, because you kind of know when you have to call and know when you might call, and so you can explain it better. It just takes time. It takes whatever, a year or so to kind of do this. Okay, I'm out of time. Those are my 5 points. I hope that helps. I want you to think about it, and we'll have a discussion about this. So